Hey YouTube, hey subscribers, thanks for tuning in. A viewer left a comment on a video recently requesting that I do a video on how I healed from my personal experiences with narcissistic abuse. And I thought it was a really good request because I started thinking through all the videos I've done, and I always talk about once you're healed or once you've reached a place of healing, but I never actually talked about how to get there. So thank you to that viewer. Here is the video that I promised, and I think it's going to open up a really great discussion in terms of how we all individually heal from the nightmare experience that is dealing with a narcissist in any capacity. So the first thing that I always have to do once I recognize what's going on is end it. And it makes me think of a lyric from a song. You know, I love to quote song lyrics that came out a couple years ago by Usher called Moving Mountains. And the lyric says, "But I keep climbing and hoping things would change, and the sky turns gray and the water from the rain washes progress away. It's like moving mountains. It's like moving mountains." So once I get that sensation that I'm trying to move mountains with someone and that any progress we make is certain to be washed away in the very near future, I go ahead and end it because I recognize a losing battle when I see one. So that ending it gives me a lot of relief all by itself. Doesn't make it easier, doesn't mean I don't cry about it, and doesn't mean I'm not upset about it, but knowing that at least I've ended any further harm stops the process. So I guess it would almost be like your body has now put a scab over the wound, so the healing process can really begin. After I've ended whatever source of this abuse is coming from, I then go into my grief cycle and I allow it to play out. So what that looks like for me is if I feel like crying, I cry. I can't tell you how many times I've cried in the car, cried in the bathroom at work, how many times I've planned to cry. So I'll look at my schedule and go, okay, I'm not going to have an opportunity to cry between 1 p.m. and 4, but between 4 and 6, I'll have ample opportunity and I'm going to get this cry out. I actually also encourage the emotions out. So there are certain songs that are very sad and very triggering for me. So I only listen to them when I need to cry. And I know that sounds weird, but it works. Put them on and I just go dive deep. I dive deep into the feelings, and I'm fortunate because I have a lot of free time in terms of my mind is not often mentally held hostage. So I am free to explore my feelings, free to think my thoughts, free to feel how I feel pretty much at all times, with the exception of when I'm at work or in other social situations. So I'm blessed in that regard. I don't know, I wouldn't be able to tell you how to do it if you live with somebody else, because especially if the person you're living with is the narcissist you're trying to recover from, that's a special situation that I would say in that case, plan your cries on the way to work. Don't do your makeup if you're a woman. Don't do your makeup until you get your cry out. Once your cry is out, then you can do your makeup. It's almost like if you feel sick and you know that if you could just throw up a little bit, you'll feel better. That's kind of how I look at it. But those of you who are even just in roommate situations and the relationship is a positive situation, unless that person is real understanding and empathic and all that, most people can't be very supportive of you as you go through this grief cycle. So I think it's very hard, and I don't know how to advise that. Anyone who's been through it while living with others, please comment, because I honestly don't have a good piece of advice for that. But those of you who don't live with anyone, you are in a very, very special place where you can just live your emotions full out. Don't fight them, lean into them, get you some good tissues, some wine if you like wine or whatever, and just cry it out. Because what I found is initially after it's over, it hurts the most, obviously. You cry it out. And what I found over time is the time span between my tearful episodes shrinks. So at first, you're crying every day, several times a day. Then maybe you go from that to crying twice a day, every day. Then maybe it goes from once a day, every day. Then maybe you find you cry once every 2 days. And the window keeps actually not shrinking, I guess expanding between cries, which I think is a very good sign. And then you'll know you're getting there when you actually catch yourself going, wow, I haven't cried about this in a few days. And then you proceed to go ahead and cry about it because now you remembered that you were supposed to be upset about something. But then it reaches a point where you actually kind of forget, especially if you're able to maintain the no contact. If the narcissist doesn't reach out to you and you don't reach out to them, the easier it is. If there's any contact in between there, it almost starts the entire process over. So to whatever degree you can maintain that no contact, maintain it, because it helps you get stronger. And don't fight the feelings that are associated with this painful loss, because even though they're horribly wicked people, doesn't make the emotions that you felt for them any less valid or any less real. So it's hard to experience that kind of loss, and you need to grieve it. If you don't grieve it, you will grieve it later. Your body is a very strange organism in that it'll just store it up for later, and it'll just wait for its opportunity to express itself. So if you have a window to express yourself and get it out, by all means, get it out. The next thing that I've done in the past to counteract the effects of these people is I never ever stopped believing in what I knew to be true about myself. So it requires pretty clear definition on who you are, who you're trying to be, your flaws, your strengths, all of those things. You have to take a really deep self-analysis and say, I'm not perfect, but here's what's great about me and here's what can be worked on. But never letting go of beliefs about how I was supposed to be treated as a person, beliefs about reciprocity, beliefs about kindness, things like that. Never letting go of what I believe to be true, even though the narcissist works very hard to counteract those beliefs and that belief system. And that's why I spend a lot of time on comment boards, or I used to anyway. I actually haven't for a couple months now, because they do frustrate me. But I think it's important to always see and always study what people are telling people. So what messages are getting put out into the universe regarding what you know to be true in your heart, and then what these controlling narcissists want you to believe. So that's why every book that's written by every celebrity, especially male celebrities coaching women on how they should be, act, interact, think, things of that nature, you can't take it as gospel just because these people are rich and famous. You have to always kind of think beyond the immediate purpose. Like what benefit would there be to altering the mindset of thousands, potentially millions of women all across the world? You have a bunch of confused women who don't know right from wrong anymore. They thought they did, then they read this book and now they're confused. And it makes predators that much more able to run their predatory script. So I say all that to say you have to maintain what's true for you. You have to. Like, who's to say what's true for you and me is right or wrong? But if you don't have anything that you're grounded in, it makes you flap in the wind. You just blow in the wind. You're very easily manipulated. So I think part of the reason I always end up in showdowns and blowouts with narcissists is because I just refuse to go against that hardcore truth that's ingrained into my soul, really. And I call them out on it. And I say, no, I don't agree. Let's talk about it. Like, I always attempt to approach it in a fair way, but they never want to have a real conversation, ever. It always deteriorates. The harder I stand on truth or on what I believe to be true, the worse their behavior becomes. And to me, that's just telltale. Because if you've got two people who really believe that they're telling the truth to each other, they can have a conversation about that. But when you got one who knows they're lying, knows they're gaslighting, knows they're manipulating, bumping up against somebody who's essentially calling them out with their behavior. So not calling them out with words, but calling them out by saying, no, I'm not going to allow you to manipulate me in this way. Basically, by standing firm on your boundaries, it sends them into a spiral. So when I see that spiral, it's very reaffirming for me that getting away from this person is the best possible thing I can do. And you hate it because, again, you don't want to believe that they're this way. But again, the more true, the more real, the more honest you are, the easier it is to expose a narcissist, because they're none of those things and they have a hard time faking it. You can actually see them getting impatient when they have to be good people. I had a blowout with a narcissist recently, and I kept having to say to this person, please let me finish my sentence. Please let me complete my thought. Please don't define me. Please don't tell me what I'm thinking. Please allow me to tell you what I'm thinking, or ask me. and just maintain that calm, cool, but steady state of, you're not going to do this to me. You're not going to budge me. You're not going to manipulate me. Please let me finish my sentence. It sent them into a spiral. They came unglued. The mask slipped and they came out of their skin. And I was like, there it is right there. So I say all that to say, in regard to this particular video, it helps me heal because it's very confirming and validating, knowing I'm not crazy. And this person is mad at me for attempting to level with them in a reasonable way. So that's not a relationship I want to be in. So that's helpful towards my healing. Also, once I've I've ended it, I'm kind of moving through the grief cycle and getting over the shock of everything. People who've been with me from the very beginning or early stages know that I love to read. I'm an avid reader. I read a lot and I read many different types of things. So I read articles, I read blogs, I read books. I'm always reading, and I read a lot about this subject, but I read about other subjects too. And to me, it's very interesting how best practices in other subjects help expose narcissistic behavior. So for example, if you read books about leadership and team development and leadership communication, things like that, you start to understand why communication dynamics with the narcissist fails, because they do everything against human nature and the principles of communication. So, and just applying it to the workplace, when you have a leader who has horrible communication skills, probably because they're a narcissist, but who's to say, that team never works. It's always dysfunctional. So there's a lot of crossover in material. And I would encourage you, if you put reading down in the past, to pick it back up and start small. You could start with one of my books in the Amazon Kindle store for $2.99. I've got a couple of them out there. You can search my author name, but start reading again, because there's other people out there who've been through these experiences. And I know that you have to reach for what you like. So some people want super high academic material. It's out there. Other people want real life, relatable stories spoken in language that they can understand and get their hands around. That's out there too. And then there's middle of the road. That's kind of a loose blend of the academic and the real world. That's out there too. So you have to find your flavor. I always recommend searching to see like who has the highest rated books and go for those. I'm actually reading one right now called Controlling People by Patricia Evans, which was a recommendation from a subscriber. And I cannot thank that subscriber enough. This book has been life changing. If all of this were a class, if this channel were a class, this book would be the prerequisite pre-read to taking the class. It's so profound and so deep. I'm a highlighter. I like to highlight my books. I've highlighted almost everything. So I'm going to actually order another one and keep that copy clean. And this will just be the copy that I've highlighted and written in. It's profound. I don't want to even do it any injustice by attempting to describe some of the content that I found in it. Right now, I'm just trying to wrap my mind around it so I can produce a couple of videos that even attempt to cover the depth of this particular book. So that's exactly what I'm talking about. Even though right now I don't have any deep entanglements with narcissists, I don't let my education about them slip, because they're not letting their attacks and their manipulation and their games, they're not letting it slip. So why should I let it slip and just assume, oh, well, just because I'm not involved with any right now, that means I'm safe for the rest of my life? No, you have to stay aware and you have to stay conscious, and you have to always keep feeding your mind with different ways to describe it, because part of how narcissists keep us stuck in the cycle is we don't have any words. We're speechless. Think about how many times a narcissist has left you speechless. It's because your mind just can't wrap itself around it. But the more language you have to wrap around what's happening, the more rooted you are, the more grounded you remain, and the easier it is to not get knocked off balance by these people, which is what they want. So I highly encourage reading. And if reading just is not your thing, videos like this and other channels that do the exact same thing, that are talking about it. So feed your brain something, either read it or listen to it, but feed your mind something so you're always ready to do battle with these people. And that might sound dramatic, but that's how they see it. They see it as war. So you're kind of in a war with no armor, unprotected and you kind of aren't even aware that you're in a war. And that's what I'm trying to prevent. You need to recognize what's happening here, where you are, who you're dealing with, and then be prepared. No, nobody wants to do this. This is not the life we signed up for, but this is what's taking place. So you're either going to be prepared for it or you're not. My goal is to make you more prepared than not. The next thing, which is kind of similar in theme, but a little different, is I always reflect and learn from the situation that I came out of. So I've been through it a lot, especially on the workplace or in the workplace. And in my dating relationships, I've experienced it a lot, and friendships. And it really didn't happen and start happening until around age 18, 19, which I find to be very strange. So I contribute that partially to why I was so naive about it all, because literally from the time I was a small child up until finishing high school, I really didn't have interpersonal problems like that. I had a big group of friends. I had a social life. It's funny because I had a better social life then than I do now, and I live on my own and I have my own place and I have the ability to have this active social life, and I choose not to. So I think it's funny. But I had, no problems. Like there wasn't any, I didn't experience anything like this until I got to college. And then especially once I hit the workforce is when it really came out. And so it took me by surprise because, again, I didn't have to go through this in middle school. I didn't battle bullies in middle school or high school. You know what I mean? And so it was surprising to me because I couldn't figure out why it kept happening over and over again. But as I became more aware, what I started to do was learn from the situation, watch the different patterns, pay attention to the similarities in thought process. So in many ways, I consider myself a social researcher. So I research society. And in that research, I'm once again reading comments. I love comment boards. I love them because people are so real there, because most of them you don't have to put your real name. So people speak freely. One of my favorite comment boards is the Experience Project, where people just go on there and just tell their whole life stories or different experiences with different things. It's fascinating to me because it gives you perspective and insight into the mind that you wouldn't otherwise have. So through all of that, this channel was born ultimately, but also it helps me identify a situation before it occurs. So just little things that they say, little things they attempt to do, just in the first couple of days of knowing you, can often tell you you're dealing with a narcissist and you already know the outcome because you've lived it before. I say that to say there are a lot of people who don't like to reflect on what happened because it's too painful, and I understand that. But in not reflecting and refusing to think about it, you set yourself up for another situation that's very similar to what you went through because you don't recognize the patterns. So as hard and painful as that reflection is, it's something you have to do unless you just trust that you'll pick up on the pattern without the reflection. If you're one of those people, that's a gift and good, but most people aren't like that. You have to do yourself the benefit of reflection, and it hurts. And that's part of what the grief cycle is for. As you're reflecting, cry it out, but reflect and take note so you're not victim at least to the same thing again. At least the next narcissist, if there is another one, will approach in such a different way that you'll say, okay, well, I didn't see that coming. But there are some similarities in their behaviors that hopefully over time you'll start to see it no matter which approach they choose to take, because there's just certain ways that good people act, and then there are certain ways that bad people act in or behave in, whatever. The next thing I did and continue to do always is I always try to work on myself. So ever since I've been very young, I've always had some goal or goals that I'm striving for, and some have come quicker than others. Some I'm still working towards, and others have already come. And with every small success, it builds my confidence and it makes me feel good about myself. It makes me feel better. And I just keep on going. I just keep attempting to achieve in spite of everything that these people have done to destroy my confidence, my self-esteem, my self-worth, all of that. And they've taken some major swipes. And there have been sleepless nights and days that I've cried because those were the days that maybe I believed them, you know what I mean? And took to heart what they were saying until they proved themselves later to be psychotic narcissist, and it made me realize, okay, you weren't crazy. You know what I mean? So always striving towards self-improvement, being open to honest feedback and then acting on that honest feedback. But more than feedback from others, you have to be able to give feedback to yourself. You know what I mean? What are you doing well right now in your life? What's going very well? What's not going well? And what needs work? You know what I mean? And always kind of running that evaluation. And then as you fix something, as you improve something in your life, as you get better, you didn't do it for someone else. You did it for yourself because you took an honest critique of your life and said, I can do better in that area. And again, that's hard. People are very sensitive. If there's nothing else that I've learned in my lifetime, is that people are very, very sensitive. They're not only sensitive to outside critiques, they're also sensitive to the critiques that come from within. And I completely relate and understand. But again, to me, if nothing else, the critiques that come from within are information that is extremely valuable to your growth and development. You have to find a way to take a critique because you learn that at the end of the day, what changed? Someone critiqued you. Go check your bank account. Did that critique affect your bank account? Did it take a withdrawal? Go to open your fridge. Did that critique remove any of the food from your refrigerator? If the answer to either of those questions is no, you're good, right? And here's another way to look at it. People are critiquing you, but you're also critiquing them. So we're all just out here critiquing each other. You're critiquing me, I'm critiquing you, we're all critiquing each other. I don't know who said it, I forgot where I heard this, but they said that pretty much everyone is scared of everybody else. So picture yourself like on a train or somewhere public, and everyone in the room is afraid of you. And when this speaker says this, people start cracking up laughing like, me? You're scared of me? But like wherever you are right now, if you're around people, just look around and imagine that all of these people are terrified of you, right? And think about how ridiculous that is, really. So we're all afraid of each other. We're all critiquing each other. It happens. It's life. It doesn't impact your being alive. It doesn't impact anything really. So learn to value honest critique that comes from the heart from others, but also learn to already have critiqued yourself so thoroughly that anything you hear really may or may not be a surprise, but you already have some things you're working on and improving them gradually. And you don't have to tell other people what those are. This can be something that just lives within you. But as you hit those little milestones, you're like, yes, and you give yourself a pat on the back. Even when there's no other support out there to be found, you have to know when you've done a good job, and you also have to know when you can do better, when you could have done better, and being honest about that and then doing better the next time. That'll build your confidence in tremendous ways. Finally, and certainly not least, I'm a person of high faith. I have a lot of faith. I don't talk about it a lot on the channel, but I do think it slips out here and there. And the reason I don't bring it up a lot is because I try to keep the channel neutral so people can digest the information without bumping up against religious principles and all of those types of different things. I don't want that to affect their ability to hear the messages. But I do have tremendous faith. There's quite a lot that I believe in terms of things that happen, why they happen, your steps and those being ordered, certain destination that you're headed towards, and individuals coming into your life that seem disruptive at the time, but in a way steered you towards the destination that you're trying to go to. A perfect example would be, as an end result of dealing with all these crazy psychotic narcissists, permission to exist exists. You know, if I hadn't had all these different encounters, I wouldn't be pursuing this subject like that. But because I've been through it so much and it has affected my life so much, this channel was born, and there are countless people that are being helped from this channel. So that's one perfect example of just kind of my faith in, okay, yeah, I went through that and that situation really sucked, but perhaps it's leading towards something, perhaps it's part of some greater plan. So those are the major ways that I've worked through the healing process of these different encounters. I have noticed that the encounters are coming farther apart because I think narcs have an internal radar that they're not aware of, and they can just kind of pick up on real quick whether or not I'm going to have any time in my schedule to deal with them or fool with them or be bothered with their nonsense. I think they can kind of pick up on that, and they're starting to leave me alone a little bit more, but they do still pop their head in every now and then. They rear their ugly little heads, and I have to chop them off real quick and send them on their way. I say all this to say that doesn't mean I'll never have another rendezvous with a narcissist. Doesn't mean another one won't snake their way into my life undetected. But at least now I'm so much more aware now than I was then. I know what kind of questions to ask in the beginning. I know what kind of behaviors to look out for. I'm so much more confident in my no's and my yeses. And I don't allow myself to be bullied out of my no anymore. I'm much more confident in my ability to spot them now, but it's not to say that it won't ever happen again. But if it does, I also know how to heal from it and move on quickly so the damage that they leave behind is not massive. I hope you found this video informative. Please put your own techniques for healing or how you manage to recover from narcissistic individuals in the comment section. And I look forward to it. Thanks, you guys. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Take care, and I grant you the permission to exist. Bye-bye.